Southern Hills Country Club claims one of the most hardscrabble beginnings of any major championship golf course. It was built during the Great Depression for a mere $100,000 on a patch of scrub oak south of Tulsa. To clear the land and groom the holes, architect Perry Maxwell hired out-of-work laborers who lined up each morning by the dozen for the chance to toil in the Oklahoma heat for 25 cents an hour. From these desperate Dust Bowl roots, Southern Hills grew flush, its dogleg holes thickened with trees and dense Bermuda rough, making it one of tournament golf's most demanding driving tests. The 7 players who've won either the PGA Championship or US Open here, from Tommy Bolt in 1958 to Tiger Woods in 2007, have been some of the game's greatest winners, combining for 29 major championships. Make that 39 if you count the titles of Babe Didrikson Zaharias, victorious in the 1946 Women's Am. In 2018, Gil Hanse and Jim Wagner returned the course to its original Maxwell roots by clearing trees, roughing up the bunkers, and rolling down the edges of the curvaceous greens. In its sleek, refurbished form, Southern Hills is ready for a new era of majors, including the 2022 PGA Championship. This is every hole at Southern Hills. Southern Hills starts with one of the most memorable opening tee shots in championship golf, as drives are launched off the property's highest point toward the distant Tulsa skyline. The strong par 4 offers an overview of the restoration work with a more open fairway, bunkers shifted from the outside to the inside corner of the dogleg, and shaved green shoulders that repel shots and introduce a wide variety of short game recovery options. Maxwell designed the par 4 second around a creek that splits the fairway in half, though the incentive to drive left diminished as the cottonwoods and other trees matured. Tree removal has revived the option for short hitters, but the best play is still down the right side for a straight angle into a deceptive green surrounded by bunkers and shaved slopes, including one beyond the putting surface that can scuttle mishits down into the creek. The second and third holes traverse the calmest land on the property and are the only long holes at Southern Hills that are relatively flat. The third doubles back in the opposite direction of 2, with the creek now on the left. It was always one of the tightest driving holes on the course, and even though there's more room to maneuver the drive today after tree clearing, it's still a target fairway, and hitting the green requires 2 well-placed shots. The site's tilting topography is a factor at the short par 4 fourth that runs uphill to a green benched into the clubhouse ridge and surrounded by a quartet of bunkers, a recurring theme at Southern Hills. Though just a drive and a pitch, the fairway kicks hard right and leaky tee shots can end up bouncing into a tributary stream lurking in the low rough. Tiger Woods bogeyed this hole in the first round of the 2007 PGA, but birdied it each of the following days on his way to winning his 4th Wanamaker Trophy. There are only 2 par 5s in play during tournaments, but they're both beasts, with the 5th clocking in at 656 yards. Big drives that are notched between staggered bunkers face a perplexing second shot due to a hazard placed in the preferred layup spot and nothing to stop balls that drift right from entering the creek. The greens at Southern Hills, with rippled and rolling edges, are on the small side, and this one, designed for a short club, tilts away from 3 deep bunkers on the left toward an embankment that falls sharply toward the water. Maxwell was a great admirer of the links of Scotland, and also studied the courses of C.B. Macdonald. The 6th is believed to be a version of the par 3 11th at St. Andrews, the Eden hole, characterized by a back-to-front sloping green and 2 fronting bunkers that Macdonald popularized in his designs, though Maxwell was reportedly never satisfied with this iteration. Ray Floyd didn't mind it. His par here in the first round of the 1982 PGA began a run of 9 consecutive threes, en route to an opening 63 and a multi-shot lead he'd never surrender. Holding a narrow lead over crowd-favorite Arnold Palmer in the 1970 PGA, Dave Stockton heard hecklers urging him to shank his second shot at the short par 4 7th or to bury it in the sand. Instead, he holed out for an eagle 2 to increase his lead. In eagle hole no more, Hanse and Wagner lengthened the 7th more than 100 yards and shifted the green back 50 paces and tight to the creek, which now comes into play on both the drive and the approach. The par 3 8th can play it over 250 yards. Maxwell loved the hole. He once told the editor of a golf magazine that, quote, "It looks so simple from the tee that everyone will go for it, and if the ball isn't exactly on line, they'll take 5. Gene Sarazen, on the other hand, hated it. "The worst damn par 3 I've ever played," he scoffed during the 1958 Open. Why? Because he went for the flag, got bunkered, and took 5. The fairway bunkers on 9 carry your eyes straight toward the twin 9th and 18th greens staged side by side on the clubhouse ridge amid a field of rugged sand shapes. Over the years, Southern Hills bunkers had morphed into crisp, upturned cups and uniform saucer shapes, reminiscent of Augusta National. But that's not what they originally looked like. The 2018 restoration brought back their hand-gouged, wavy, Depression-era brows and set them tighter against the slopes of the convex greens to better catch misplayed approach shots. Gil Hance believes that Southern Hills possesses one of the best routings in golf because of the way the holes fall obliquely across the site's ridges and side slopes. A great example is the 10th, a sharp down-and-up dogleg right that fits the land like a custom-cut suit. The more drives play conservatively away from the winding ditch at the bottom of the fairway, the longer and more difficult the approach becomes to a blind green that pitches wickedly right to left. One of the major projects undertaken in 2018 was the rehabilitation and expansion of the natural creek system that winds through Southern Hills. Perry Maxwell intended it to come into play on no less than 8 holes, but over time trees smothered its banks and other parts were piped underground. After several new branches were created, including the section across the fairway on 10, the creek is once again an attractive, functional hazard and an elemental part of the golf course. 11 is an all-carry downhill shot to another green nested in a quartet of bunkers. Previously, wiry Bermuda rough crept up to the collars of the putting surfaces, holding up shots that missed greens and leaving lob wedge recoveries. Now, by exposing the crowned shoulders of the greens and adding short grass fall-offs, approaches that flirt with edge hole locations run away from the green, perhaps even into the water on this little hole if the miss is to the left. Arnold Palmer never won the PGA Championship, but he might have if not for Southern Hills' 12th hole. A strong dogleg left considered by Ben Hogan to be one of the country's greatest par 4s. Palmer's second shot found the greenside pond during the second round of the 1970 PGA, and instead of taking a drop, he attempted to play out, leading to a double bogey. He ended up finishing second, 2 shots behind Dave Stockton. Tommy Bolt fared better, playing the hole in 3 under during the 1958 Open, besting the field by 4. A new tournament tee stretches the par 5 13th to over 630 yards and has players firing drives over the 12th green. A grassy ravine cuts across the fairway 320 yards out, leaving awkward stances for players seeking to attack with second shots that must carry past 2 ponds in front of the small 4,000 square foot green. Nick Price didn't seem to think the 13th too terribly difficult. He made 4 here each day on his way to winning the 1994 PGA Championship by 6 shots. Southern Hills small greens are among the most fortified in major championship golf. 11 different putting surfaces are guarded by at least 4 bunkers, including the green at the long par 3 14th. Though it's since been replaced, the course was once infamous for its loose powdery bunker sand that was dredged from the Arkansas River and known technically as number 6 wash. Nick Price actually gave credit to his runaway win in '94 to his Saturday round. He shot just even par 70, but was able to get up and down from the powdery bunkers 5 times in 5 attempts. Hubert Green held a 1-shot lead during the final round of the 1977 U.S. Open when he stepped onto the tee at 15. That's when FBI officials notified him a death threat had been called in. As if this par 4 bending left and demanding long, high approaches over bunkers weren't tough enough, snipers were allegedly going to shoot Green as he played it. He chose to carry on under intense surveillance, but nevertheless hooked his tee shot into the trees. From there, he managed to get his second shot on the green, collect himself, and 2-putt for one of the most death-defying pars of all time. Dan Jenkins once described Southern Hills as elegant but brutal, and he could have been talking specifically about 16. It's a prodigious hole that plays through the same grassy trough as the neighboring 13th, with an equally small crowned green designed for a short iron rather than a long approach. That's because it's a par 5 for members, though it plays as a 527-yard par 4 for events. After surviving the 15th in 1977, Hubert Green birdied 16, giving him the cushion he'd need to win the Open by 1 shot. The short 17th might be the most attractive hole at Southern Hills, with gorgeous fairway movements that tumble downward toward a creek on the right. As at the 10th, Hanson Wagner added a section of stream crossing in front of the green. That can come into play when the tees are shifted forward to create a drivable par 4, but 17 is highly strategic as a 2-shot hole as well, since the angle into the green becomes much shallower the farther drives are played left and away from the hazard. Southern Hills 18th is one of the hardest finishing holes in major championship golf. Tiger Woods and Tommy Bolt are the only two champions to par it in the final round. The creek has been extended all the way across the landing zone, putting more fear into the drive, and the green is one of the most severely tilted on the course. It was center stage for one of the US Open's most shocking moments in 2001, when leaders Mark Brooks, Stuart Sink, and Retief Goosen took 9 putts collectively to hole out, sending Brooks and Goosen into a playoff that Goosen eventually won. Southern Hills' reputation as an unrelenting, physically imposing tee-to-green test is well-earned, but the putting spectacle on the 18th green in 2001 hinted at a quality that until recently might have been overlooked, or at least covered up, that the true genius of the design is not found in trees or long grass, but rather in Maxwell's superb set of greens. From scarcity to abundance, from the depths of the Depression to the heights of championship golf, Southern Hills remains one of the game's sternest places to play, and now also one of its most dynamic.